Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I am Tom.
I am Stephanie.
It is our literature unit for the month of April, and last time we began to talk about our featured work of literature, The Pearl, by John Steinbeck. Remember, John Steinbeck has written lots of novels. He wrote them a long time ago. He's been dead for many years, but people still read his works of literature. Oh my gosh, what are some of his books there? He's got The Grapes of Wrath, Cannery Row, 1939, Tortilla Flat, etc., etc.
Those are comedies.
Okay, so
Tortilla Flat and what's it, What was the other one, Tom?
Cannery Row?
Cannery Row is also
they're various
considered
works
funny.
of literature. Yeah, he doesn't write only depressing stories where people suffer from greed and stuff like that. So it might be worth checking out. And I've only read one or two of his works, and as I recall, they're not that difficult to read. Not like William Faulkner. I tried to read that once, and I couldn't get past the first page. It was just too difficult to understand what he was talking about. But in any case here, John Steinbeck, I think, is rather user-friendly. So you ought to check out this book, and it's only 90 pages long. And we summarized it in the first part. We didn't finish our summary, but what has happened so far?
We did. We started out talking about the plot. Remember, that's what the story in a book is called, the plot. When we left you, we had some trackers that were following our little family, and they were hot on their tail, or you can even say hot on their trail, both. But we learned about Kino and his wife Juana. Their son was tragically bitten by a scorpion, which really hurts and causes the skin around where they've stung you to really swell up. And it becomes very painful. Now, this little guy was an infant, so it really could have hurt him badly. His body's not as big as older people, like adults. If a scorpion stings you and you're an adult, you'll still be okay, boy, but it hurts. Oh, it hurts. So the doctor in the small village was wealthy and very arrogant. He refused to treat the little boy because the parents couldn't afford to pay him more than these 8 small pearls that Kino had found. He's a pearl diver, remember, that's his job. So they were really desperate, and they took their canoe out to try to find a bigger pearl. And they did find a massive pearl, but it had a ghostly gleam to it. So it looked kind of foreboding. Probably should not have, taken that pearl and just kind of advertised the fact that they'd found a massive pearl. Everyone in the village heard about this, and of course everybody wants it because everyone's greedy. And so they started to have problems at that point, and they just didn't stop. So oddly enough, the doctor, who still has not been paid, decides to go visit the family, just out of his good heart. No, he's not a good-hearted doctor. He went there because he'd heard the pearl was there, and he wanted to see if he could see where Kino had hidden it or buried it or put it. I know from reading The Pearl, he actually had buried it under the floor in his own hut. So the neighbors all wanted it. The doctor wanted it. Kino wants to sell it, but when he took it to the local dealers, they were all working together in kind of a monopoly, and they all decided, let's not offer him above this certain amount. They were lowballing him. If you want to sell something and someone says, oh, I'll give you $1,000 for it, but it's actually worth $30,000, they're lowballing you, and you should leave them. They're not good people. Well, he gets really mad, Kino does, when they don't offer him enough money. He says he's going to go to the capital to sell it instead. And at that point, they've got thieves chasing him. Kino happens to kill one in self-defense. Their home is burned down while all of this chaos is happening. And they do make a run for the capital. And at this point, we kind of had to close our program last time, and we're moving on. We're going to finish up the plot now.
Yep, they had a trio of trackers on their tail, but they ended up taking refuge in a cave in the mountains, and that's where we left off. So let's find out what happens next, everybody. Let's read through the entire contents of our lesson for today. To the family's horror, the trackers set up camp near their hiding place. As Kino creeps up to ambush them, Coyotito cries out loudly. Believing it's a coyote, one of the trackers fires a random shot toward the sound. Kino murders them in a frenzy, but then hears an anguished scream from Juana. Coyotito is dead, killed by the tracker's bullet. The next day, Kino and Juana arrive back in the village with their baby's body. As their neighbors watch in stunned silence, Kino throws the cursed pearl back into the ocean, hoping never to see it again. An American literary classic, John Steinbeck's novella The Pearl paints a tragic picture. The story uses several key symbols to tell of the power of fate and the consequences of greed. Kino's peace is shattered by an act of fate. His son is stung by a scorpion, setting events into motion that upend the family's simple life. The scorpion symbolizes the destruction of innocence by literally poisoning Coyotito and beginning a cycle of evil that repeats throughout the story. The role of the titular pearl shifts during the novella. At first, it represents hope. Kino believes the pearl could provide his family a better life, as well as get medicine for Coyotito. However, it soon morphs into an object of greed. Kino becomes ambitious and possessive over the pearl, and his neighbors covet and try to steal it. The perceptive Juana recognizes it as a threat and tries to discard it. She's ultimately caught in the same web of greed, however, as she flees with Kino to protect the pearl. As a consequence, they lose their one truly precious thing, their child. With Coyotito's death, Kino and Juana's reason to struggle is gone. The once prized pearl is now worth nothing more than the evil memories it carries.
Okay, guys, let's dive in. Now, to the family's horror, they're really horrified because they can see that the trackers who were on their tail have set up camp near their hiding place, so they're right nearby. If you set up something, you arrange it, you get it working so you can use it. You can maybe set up a new computer in your home. Maybe you're getting a camera shot set up so you can set up the shot. You can set up a lot of things. You can set up an organization, get it started, arrange it. But here, to set up camp means to put up your tents, to make a fire, to get all organized so that you can stay there for the night. Sadly, the trackers were very accurate, and they followed closely behind, and they're very near Kino and his wife's hiding place.
Right, and Kino needs to damage them somehow to get them off their trail, get them off their tail, basically. And Kino creeps up to ambush them. He sneaks up to them, and he wants to ambush them. If you ambush someone, you attack them secretly from all sides, usually. And Coyotito cries out loudly, and believing it's a coyote, one of the trackers fires a random shot toward the sound. Now, here, of course, in Mexico and in North America, we have a kind of dog that's called a coyote. It's similar to a wolf, and I think the hockey team in Arizona there is called the Arizona Coyotes.
Yep.
I believe that's their NHL team there. Again, it's a kind of wild dog that is dangerous. You don't want to mess with them. They could bite you and kill you. And here, of course, these three guys, this trio of bad guys trying to catch up with them, they hear the cry of Coyotito, but they don't know it's actually a human baby. They believe it's actually a coyote. A coyote, again, is that dog, and they make a sort of howling sound similar to wolves. And so one of the trackers fires a random shot toward the sound. I guess they're kind of having a little party. Oh, I heard a coyote out there. Let me try to shoot it, even though I can't see it. And it's a random shot. If something's at random or if something's random, it's just happening without any kind of order or without any kind of method. So, of course, if you've bought a lottery ticket and then you watch the lottery drawing that night, they pick those numbers at random. I guess they push a button and the ball comes up with a number. Those numbers appear at random in no special order.
Right. So it's kind of sad. You can't just take your gun and start shooting it wherever you want. It was a random shot toward the sound. Kino murders them in a frenzy. If you have read this book, you know that he takes some sort of weapon over. It's kind of gross. A machete, which is a really long knife.
Ooh.
And he goes over and he murders them in a frenzy. If you're in a frenzy, you're kind of insane and out of control. You can't control your behavior. You do things in a kind of a wild manner. It sounds like he had just lost his mind there for a minute. And he then hears an anguished scream from his wife. Oh, when I saw that, I thought, oh, this isn't good. Anguished means you're experiencing something where you're really suffering, and this cry just comes from you, anguished. We use it a lot when someone has suffered a loss. Maybe someone's passed away in their family, or maybe their pet has passed away, and they're just, so sad and just anguished. So the cry or scream comes from his wife. And here we find out why. Their little guy, Coyotito, is dead. How is he dead? Not from the scorpion's sting, no. He was killed by the tracker's bullet. Remember, one of the trackers just randomly fires his gun towards that sound he heard. He thought it was a coyote, and it wasn't. It was actually that little boy.
Oh, no, that's tragic. So that's the tragic part of the tale of greed.
Yeah.
And the next day, Kino and Wana arrive back in the village with their baby's body. So they're sad here, the baby's dead. So they go back to the village and they've got their baby's body. And as their neighbors watch in stunned silence, Kino throws the cursed pearl back into the ocean, hoping never to see it again. So the neighbors are stunned, which means they're very, very surprised. In fact, they're so stunned that they can't really move. That's what stunned means. It says if you were shocked by electricity and then you just are really still and you can't move. I guess it's similar to being tased. I guess you're stunned. You're shocked, you're electrocuted maybe, and so they're very, very surprised, and they just watch Kino come into town with the dead baby. Kino realizes that his greed has destroyed his child's life, so he throws the cursed pearl back into the ocean, hoping never to see it again. Remember, it had that ghostly gleam, so maybe that pearl was haunted. Well, that brings us to the midway point in our discussion for today. Let's listen now to our beloved Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们昨天带大家看了一本短篇小说，这个短篇小说呢就叫做《珍珠》，它其实是要谈人性的贪婪，让希望变成绝望这样的一个故事。当我们昨天讲到啊 Kino 因为他是一个采珍珠的潜水员嘛，那因为他的儿子被蝎子蛰了，身上又没有足够值钱的珍珠能够让医生医治，所以他就跟他的老婆胡阿娜一起去找更大的珍珠，真的被他们找到了。可是找到之后却带来一连串的不幸，因为他们希望这个珍珠能够卖到最好的价钱，但是因为镇上人都知道了，所以就有小偷一直不断的想要偷这个珍珠。后来他们是带着珍珠跟小孩子跑到山洞里面去，但是呢有一组3个人的小偷还是跟着他们。好，我们接下来看这个故事。后来呢，他们跑到这个山洞里面啊，让他们很恐惧的是，跟踪他们的人还是在藏身之处啊，附近搭了一个营地。而且 Kino 想要去突袭他们，想要阻止他们的偷窃。这时候他儿子小狗子居然开始放声大哭，到底发生什么事情？我们看一下第一段第2句的地方。第2句一开始有一个 as 当连接词的时候，可能有3个意思：一 when， 2 because， 3如同好像。在这里我们根据文意去推测，这里的 as 是 when 的意思。当 Kino 爬起来想要突袭这个3人一组的小偷的时候，他的儿子小狗子就开始大哭，然后其中一个跟踪者以为是土狼啦，所以就朝着那个哭喊的方向就开枪了，叭叭叭叭。开枪了之后 Kino 还是疯狂的杀死那个跟踪者，但是随后听到胡安娜非常痛苦的尖叫声，因为他们的儿子居然被乱枪打死了。好，在第一段当中的第3句，我们看到分词构句 believing 的还原应该是 because he believes，因为这个小偷相信他是什么什么东西，相信这个哭声啊是来自于一个土狼，所以他就开枪。那么我们把连接词的 because 删掉， believes 变成动词 ing believing， 而 he 呢指的就是逗点之后的主词 one of the trackers， 这个所谓的小偷的其中一个，所以句子又简化了，因为认为是土狼，所以就随机开枪。好，那现在因为小狗子已经死啦，所以呢 Kino 就只能带着胡安娜呢一起把尸体带回村子里面去。所以我们看一下第一段第4句这个地方，第4句是有点长啦，在冒号之后出现了一个分词构句，分词构句逗点之后的 killed 我们先还原成为 because he is killed， 因为小狗子被这个 tracker 杀死了，逗点之后的 because 跟 he 都删掉，因为主词就是这个 coyotito。好，那么后面的 be 动词变成 being， 可是在简化当中它还是被删掉了，因为被杀死啦，所以就被带回村子里面。那么大家邻居啊就很震惊的看着他们，这个 Kino 呢就把那一颗啊被诅咒的珍珠直接扔回海里，不希望再看到它。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're talking about John Steinbeck's The Pearl, A Tragic Tale of Greed. And we kind of finished up the novel in that first paragraph.
But in any case here, we're going to talk now about the work of literature itself. An American literary classic, John Steinbeck's novella The Pearl, paints a tragic picture. It tells us a tragic story. The story uses several key symbols to tell of the power of fate and the consequences of greed. So I guess this story is about fate, your destiny, what's going to happen to you, and how you probably have no control over that fate. It's kind of already been decided by a power larger than you. And of course, we have the consequences of greed. If you are greedy, well, there are consequences. Things will happen as a result of that greed.
Kino's peace is shattered by an act of fate. Now, an act of fate would be something that happens in life that you can't control. It just happens, either through bad luck or good luck. His son is stung by a scorpion. Remember, we learned in day 1 that scorpion was kind of climbing down a little rope, and Kino saw it before it stung his son, but he couldn't get to it fast enough. And then his little infant son was stung. That was an act of fate. Kino didn't bring it upon himself, it just happened. And this set events into motion, and we see that it upends the family's simple life. To upend to something means to cause something to completely change and cause a lot of problems and make something kind of chaotic. To upend. If you lose your job, it kind of upends your whole life. It changes everything. Your routine has completely changed because now you need to go look for a job. What you're doing has changed from minute to minute. So you don't want anything that upends your life. And that's what happened when that scorpion stung that little infant.
Yep, the events upend their life. The events screw up their life, basically. And the scorpion symbolizes the destruction of innocence by literally poisoning Coyotito and beginning a cycle of evil that repeats throughout the story. So what does that scorpion symbolize? What does it mean? What does it represent? Well, that symbolizes the destruction of innocence. Innocence basically is when you haven't really had anything bad happen to you before. Life is generally okay. Of course, when children grow up, eventually they lose their innocence when they start competing with other people and they find out that everybody's selfish and they won't stop to accomplish their goals and they don't really care if you get hurt in the process. So you kind of lose your innocence as you grow up. And in this particular case, it's all about the destruction of innocence because that poor little baby was stung by a scorpion. What did that baby do to deserve that?
Right. And so this destruction of innocence happens by the fact that Coyotito is literally poisoned by a scorpion. That scorpion, when he stings him, that little stinger tail has poison in it. So the destruction of that innocence happens when Coyotito is literally poisoned. Literally means just as we said, exactly that way. And we use it to emphasize that something's actually happening and not in just a figurative way or a way that we're just imagining it happening. He literally poisons Coyotito with that sting, and it begins a cycle of evil that repeats throughout the story. Everyone seems to do or make bad choices, make evil choices. Kino beats his own wife. Kino actually ambushes those trackers and tries to kill them all with a machete. Instead of just being able to defend yourself, if you go out and attack somebody, you are murdering them, even if they're bad guys. So try not to kill anybody unless they try to kill you first.
Yeah, it all started with that evil scorpion. If they had made preparations, perhaps the scorpion would not have bitten that innocent child, but that set in motion various actions and activities. And, of course, they lost their innocence. The child was poisoned, and evil started to repeat throughout the story. Now, the role of the titular pearl shifts during the novella. Here we've got the word titular, and that basically means the pearl in the title. Titular, as you can see, looks like the word title. So, yeah, that's the pearl in the title. The role of the pearl in the title shifts or changes during the novella. It plays different roles as the plot continues. To shift means to move. Like, of course, in Taiwan, we get earthquakes because those tectonic plates are shifting. They're moving to different positions, and when they move, they rub up against each other, and then we get earthquakes as a result.
Or if you're in class and you're listening to a long lecture, sometimes you have to shift your body around because it gets tired sitting in one position. So to move, to cause someone to move from place to place, or even changing the position of your body, we use that verb shift, to shift around. So here, and remember, it's the verb, not the noun, shift. At first, it represents hope. The pearl represents hope because Kino thinks the pearl could provide his family a better life, as well as get some medicine for Coyotito or some medical help from that wealthy, selfish doctor. However, it soon morphs into an object of greed. If something morphs into something else, it changes shape. And it changes, sometimes it even changes your actions if it morphs. Some of these crazy movies like what's it called? The
Transformers?
Transformers, yeah. They morph into something else. Or even the X-Men movies, some of those X-Men characters are able to morph into different beings or shapes or things like that to morph, just to change into something. So it soon morphs into an object of greed. It started out representing hope, and then it changed into something that represented greed.
Indeed. So, yes, it changes into an object of greed. Kino becomes ambitious and possessive over the pearl. If you're possessive, of course, you want to keep it. You don't want other people to have it. And his neighbors covet. They really want it, and they try to steal it. The perceptive Juana recognizes it as a threat and tries to discard it. If you're perceptive, you can see things that most people can't. Oh, how perceptive of you. And she's ultimately caught in the same web of greed. She goes along with his greed as she flees with Kino to protect the pearl. To flee means to run away from a dangerous situation.
So as a consequence, they lose their one truly precious thing, and that's their little boy, their child. With Coyotito's death, Kino and Juana's reason to struggle is gone. The once prized pearl is now worth nothing more than the evil memories it carries. Nothing more than, we use this phrase when something follows it that kind of defines what that is. So it's nothing more than. You could say that we found out that Omicron was nothing more than a mild cold, but at first everyone was scared to death of it. So nothing more than. It means, usually we use this when we're talking about something that is thought of as one having a certain meaning, but then we discover it's really not that important.
Yep, indeed. And that brings us to the end of our discussion about the pearl in today's program. It's time now to turn things over to our Chinese teacher.
好，那当然珍珠其实我们刚刚说它是一个短篇小说，那么它的作者呢其实非常有名的一个作者叫做 John Steinbeck， 他在那一本小说里面就其实收录了这个 The Pearl 珍珠这本书，当然运用了一些关键的象征啦，比如说呢命运是什么呢？小狗子被蝎子给蛰了，这就是一个命运。还有贪婪 greed， 当我们贪婪的时候会发生很多不好的事情。我们刚刚说这个小狗子啊，他就是 Kino 的儿子被蝎子蛰伤这件事情，其实就启动了一连串这个本来很单纯生活的一个家庭整个的事件。在第二段第三句这个地方我们要特别注意哦，第三句这边有一个简化的关系子句，逗点之后有 setting 先还原变成 which sets， 那么 which 要特别小心哦，它指的是逗点前面的这一整句话，也就是 His son is stung by a scorpion 这一件事情启动了事件。那么后面还有一个限定用法的关系子句，先行词是 motion 之后的 that 到句尾可以左右括号，这个 motion 就是一连串的事件了，也启动了一连串的事。好，那当然蝎子就是所谓的 fate 嘛，而且这个命运的蝎子呢，的确真的就是毒害了这个小狗子，然后开启整个邪恶的循环。好，那么当然这个与短篇小说同名的珍珠这个角色在故事当中就发生了转变，本来是希望，后来变成一个象征贪婪的物品，而且我们知道到最后居然连小狗子都死了。那么因为小狗子的死亡，所以 Kino 跟胡安娜就失去了这种奋斗拼搏的理由。好，当然我们读了这个故事之后就会知道其实命运的力量是很大的，而且尽量呢还是要做到不要贪婪，这样子对我们的生命才是比较好的哦。以上是我们今天的内容，我是安娜，我们下次见。
That's it for today, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And even if you decide not to read this book, there are plenty of other works of literature available online to help you improve with your English reading ability. We wish you the best of luck. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.